There's a competition out there that's arguably more intense than any Olympic final. And here's the crazy part, it doesn't involve a single athlete. We're talking about the insane, high stakes games cities have to play just to win the right to host something like the Olympic Games.
And it all kicks off with this incredible vision, right? You can just picture it, a city, a whole nation holding that Olympic flag high. But look, this is way more than just a symbol. It's a promise of being on the world stage, a huge wave of tourism, and, of course, a massive boost to the economy. It really is the ultimate prize.
But as you can imagine, getting your hands on that prize is an epic journey. I mean, it's a total marathon of politics, money, and strategy. And it all happens years, even a decade, before a single torch is lit. So the big question is, how does a city actually win this game?
All right, let's dive right in. The race to host. And to really get what this is all about, you've got to understand the unbelievable scale of what these cities are signing up for.
Think of it this way. It's like the world's most expensive and complicated job interview. Seriously, it's a formal process where a city has to prove it's got the cash, the buildings, the roads, and the political backing for what is basically one of the biggest logistical puzzles in human history. And the craziest part? It's a massive investment that only pays off if you actually land the job.
Okay, so now we're stepping into the bidding maze itself. And like any good maze, to find your way through, you got to speak the language. So let's quickly break down some of the key jargon you're going to run into.
First up, you've got the RFI, or a request for information. This is kind of like the window shopping phase. A potential host city uses it to gather info, see what's out there, and figure out what's even possible. It's all about learning. No contracts are getting signed here.
Next, we have the RFP, the request for proposal. And okay, this is where things get really serious. We're not just asking questions anymore. This is a super detailed proposal laying out the entire plan. And here's the key. The winner isn't just the cheapest option. Nope, it's about the best overall package, the strongest vision. And finally, there's the RFB, the request for bid. This one's way more straightforward. It's basically used for everyday stuff, goods or services, where really the only thing that matters is the bottom line price. Who can do it for the least amount of money?
So you might be wondering, how does this all fit together? Well, it's basically a 5-step dance. First, you define what's needed. Then you send out the requests. The cities submit their bids, a committee reviews them all, and finally, the contract is awarded. It's a long, super structured process, all designed to find the absolute best candidate for the job. And yeah, you can bet that getting through this whole process is not cheap. Cities have to jump over 2 massive financial hurdles. First, there's the bidding fee. You can basically think of this as an application fee, just for the chance to be considered. Then, if they actually win, they have to pay an even bigger hosting fee straight to the organization in charge, like the International Olympic Committee. Okay, so we've got the paperwork and the fees down. But what does it really take to put together a winning bid? What's the secret sauce?
Well, experts have pretty much boiled it down to 8 key things. And it's not just about having a cool idea. You need real, tangible stuff, like stadiums that are already built, because that keeps costs down. But you also need the intangible stuff, like getting all your politicians on the same page and having a really smart, well-connected team running the bid. To get a real sense of what infrastructure actually means, let's look at something like the NCAA Final Four basketball tournament. They have some serious, non-negotiable demands. We're talking a stadium that holds over 60,000 people and at least 10,000 available hotel rooms. And these aren't just suggestions, They're the absolute minimum you need to even get in the door.
And for the Olympics? Oh, the scale is on a whole other level. This is not some short-term campaign. It is a 10-year journey. I mean, look at this timeline. The host city gets picked 7 years before the games even start. But the real nitty-gritty planning, that kicks off a full decade beforehand. It is just an incredible long-term commitment.
But here's the thing. This is where it gets really, really complicated. Because just following the official rulebook, it's often not enough. There are these other powerful forces at play. Things that happen behind the scenes, way outside of the official checklist. We're talking about the unseen influences. Things like how stable is the host country's economy? What are its political alliances? What does the head of the IOC personally want? And maybe the biggest one of all, the immense power of TV money. And check this out. This is just staggering. A whopping 80% of the IOC's broadcasting revenue comes from American TV networks. Now, what does that mean? It means they have incredible leverage. Their needs, like making sure the big events are on TV at the right time for American audiences, can have a huge impact on who gets chosen to host.
So, okay, after a decade of planning, of navigating all this official and unofficial stuff, a city finally wins. They get the games. But it makes you ask, what's the real price of all that glory? What's the legacy that actually gets left behind? Well, this right here, this was the dream scenario. A study from Oxford projected that the London 2012 Games would pump a massive £16.5 billion into the UK economy. I mean, that is the kind of promise that gets cities to throw their hats in the ring in the first place.
But there's always a but, right? There's a big counter-argument here. Some economists look at these numbers and say, hold on a second. They argue these estimates are overblown because they don't account for the money the city would have made anyway, without the games. So the actual benefit, it could be way smaller than what's advertised.
And it's not just the numbers. The development itself gets criticized. A lot of the time, cities create what's called a tourist bubble. This perfectly polished, almost fake-feeling area just for visitors. And the big criticism is that all these shiny new things are built for people who are only there for 2 weeks, not for the people who actually live there year-round.
And that brings us to the really dark side of this whole bidding game. Let's take a trip back to the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics in 2002. This event became notorious, and not for anything that happened on the ice or snow, but for something that went down long before the first athlete ever showed up. Turns out, the Salt Lake City bid was at the center of a massive bribery scandal. And as you can see here, this was hardly a one-off thing. From some pretty serious allegations around the Tokyo 2020 Games to the widespread corruption we've seen in FIFA, the history of bidding for these mega events is just filled with scandals. And that, of course, really damages public trust in the whole system. And that brings us right back to where we started. This whole bidding process, it's a wild mix, isn't it? It's part grand vision, part careful planning, and part shady backroom deals. It promises this incredible national pride and a huge economic windfall, but it also comes with enormous risks and some really tricky ethical questions. So it leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When the whole world is watching, what is the real price of glory?